Right, as you know from the last video, I've got all my mud guards on, and I was going to be doing a bit of wiring, but what I've done first is I've set this handbrake up. I've got it now where when I get it up so far, I think that's locked on that side. It'll also locked on that side. I've already checked. Tightened all this lot up. Now I have got some adjustments still here, so if the MOT man says that the handbrake's got too much travel on it, I can pull that up by adjusting these. I can also keep the camera in focus, or in the right place should I say. I can adjust these two as well, which will give it less travel on here. But at the minute I'm happy with where everything's at. This is all tight now. I've got, as you can see, I've got the rear pipe on. I haven't got the heat shield on obviously, but I've got the rear pipe on. These are all tightened up properly, the brackets. Camera works crap. Now there's a top plate that I've made for it just to cover the gap that was in the top, which are locked on with aero bolts, which like anti-vibration. They're not like Nylox. Similar thing to what they use on sort of aeroplanes. It stops it coming loose. So I've got one on there. That's not tight, but it won't vibrate loose. It won't come loose anymore. But it allows the bit to swivel on where it's joined. And the only problem I have got is my handbrake's sticking. Need a bit of oil. But what I've also done, you see here, there's a couple of plates. I just sort of knocked a bit of a cover up, which just, it screws in place. I can get it to sit properly with my fingers. So it just sort of covers all that up. But at the minute I'm just leaving it off at the moment. So now that I've got that sort of adjusted, as I say earlier, I can adjust it more if he wants less travel on the lever when it goes for its MOT. But I've got it now where it's locking each side equally. As in, if we go, I think it's that. I think that's it locked at that actually. No, it's not. So you can see there it turns. The other side will be turning as well. If I go up one more notch, that's it. As you can see, I'm actually moving the bike. So that other side is the same. When it's in that notch there, I can turn the other side, but when I pull it up to that notch there, it's locked. I can't turn it. So it's somewhere near sort of equal. And as I say, with these adjusters here and this, I can tweak it if I need to. So that's the handbrake done. They're all tight. You know, what you've got there is a little bit of twist in the handbrake, but the handbrake mechanism's loose anyway, if you know what I mean. It's got to be, otherwise it won't. That's starting to annoy me now. Probably need a bit of lube in it somewhere. Yeah, so I'm happy with that at the minute. It's all proper tightened up. There, as you can see there, I haven't got the front pipe on yet because this bracket goes down and sits in between the exhaust bracket and the mounting plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little spacer the same thickness as this bracket, so that the pipes are sitting equally with each other. And that's why the front pipe isn't on yet. Right, I'll knock you off again for now. I'm going to start getting some wires put together to come from under here. Maybe I'll show you actually from under here. There's the plug. Where's my fucking torch? I bet it's miles away. Yeah. Anyways, as you can see, I think, there's the plug, the red and yellow black bit. It's going to plug into there and come down. It'll push in. When it's plugged in, it'll push to that side, and it'll actually be down like that. I'm going to bring it down. I'll cable tie it to this, then I'll cable tie it to that, and the wire will run along the swing arm and then up into this bit here. That's the rear lights plug there, so the wires will come up, one up that side from that side. Them two will join ready to come into here, and then there'll be a third wire that's going to come up the mud guard, because I've got another backlight to sit in. So I'll start doing some wiring and I'll come back and show you that when it's a bit more on, if you know what I mean. Right, back soon. Right, I've got the wiring in. Just change this torch. As you can see there, it's clipped in. I've brought it down. I've just put a cable tie round that bit there onto the handbrake cable, and then underneath it's just running along the handbrake cable into, if I can keep this camera in a decent position, it loops over there and goes up. There's the cables going up, and as you can see over there is the same thing. It's coming along the handbrake cable, and then that loops over, comes round. In turn, I need to fasten these bits in yet. As you can see, it's just fell off. But that's just looped in into the top. Just so that's the both sides mud guards sort of wired up to that point. Turn this torch off. I've also put the plate on the handbrake to cover the mechanism up. Just held on with a couple of Allen head bolts. So what I'm going to do now is put my wheels on, because then I can roll it, because I need to do a bit of work underneath the back. I say underneath the back, up in this underneath here in the mudguard. I've got a bracket that I need to make for the new light I've bought. So I'll knock you off for now, get these wheels put on, then I'll come back and show you what it looks like with the wheels on under a set of painted mudguards. Then we'll go from there. Right, back soon. And there she is, sat on her wheels for the first time in a while. It's looking sort of tidy. So what I need to do now is, as you can see by all this crap here and over there and here, and I need to wheel it out so I can have a freaking clean up in here. Right, cool lads. Not looking too bad. Right, Back soon. Right, I've made a bracket to go under the back. Got a new tail light in there as well, so you've got another running light and a brake light. That also shines down onto the number plate, which will bolt on here. Now then, I've got a torch, I'll show you what the crack is underneath. It still needs painted and tidied up a little bit. And the torch is running out, but as you can see there, hang on, where the hell am I? There. It's just bolted onto existing bolts, and a little plate to stiffen it up so it doesn't rattle about. Obviously there's a bit more welding to do to it. So that's sort of, as I say, another little bit of weld here and there on it. Just to, I mean, it's solid enough for a number plate to mount on. The wiring isn't done. I'm going to wait for the wiring. Got plenty of time because I need all the wiring up on the front end done yet before I can do any testing, etc. It also needs painted, so I've got it to take back off anyways. Also, I got the I can't remember on the last clip whether I had both pipes on or whatever, but the pipes are back on, the heat shields are back on, so that's looking tidy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a bit of a shufty around of stuff. It's absolutely pissing the heavens out down there, so I can't put, well, I can put my bikes out, but I'm not gonna. But I'm going to be working on the front end. I'm going to take the front end back off and grease it all up properly and then put it back together so that that's it, it's on, if you know what I mean. So I'll knock you off for now, have a bit of a shufty around, and then when I come back we'll take this front end off, as I say, and get it sorted. Also, when I was doing making the mudguard, basically the usual, just make up some cardboard templates, etc. Get the gist of it and then weld it all, like cut it out in steel and then weld it all together. So, right, I'll knock you off for now and then I'll come back and we'll be on this front end. Won't be long. Right, I've jacked the bike up, front wheels off the ground, just like you can turn it, but it's catching the carpet sort of thing, so it won't freely spin, so the weight is ever so slightly on the front wheel. On the bottom of the, you won't be able to see that, but I will lift up when I get to that point. On the bottom of the yokes there's a little chrome sort of cover that sits up underneath. I've took that off just to make sure I had the right size socket. But what I'm going to do first is take this front wheel out. Everything, I don't know how well this will pick up, but as you can see there, it is just covered in dust. Everything in this garage is just covered in dust from when I was doing the mudguards. I'll give it all a clean up as I'm going, sort of, before I put it back together. So first things first, I'm going to take this front wheel out. So I'll undo the, it wasn't tight anyways because I hadn't put it in properly to start with. So that can come off. And the lock washer. Sit that down there temporarily. And what I need now is my little Torx set. To give you an idea of how everything's covered in dust. I didn't realise that was sat open, so all these will need cleaned at some point. So I'll just get the one I need, because I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is. And what we'll do, grab my torch. Because I'll be truthful with you, I can't even remember if this is a Torx or whether it's an Allen head. It's that long since I've been underneath it. So, my mistake, they're actually Allen heads and not Torx. So I'll put this kit back over here and get my Allen keys. And get the right size Allen on the job. And another thing I can't remember is whether these were frigging metric. With them being jack forks at the end of the day. So let's have a look. Take these two cap bolts right out. I know you can't see 100% what I'm on with, but basically, two dome heads, like Allen key bolts, Allen head bolts, but they're domed. Just hold your cap on your bottom of your forks. And although I took it off with a metric Allen key, I'm still not 100% that they are actually metric. I will double check. Now I've got them off and I can see them properly. I will double check. But what I've got to do now is hopefully knock this shaft out and then just roll the wheel out. Oh, and I'll just roll that up here out of the way for now. The wheel needs a good clean as well. Just put these back together. Just stick them down there. The next thing I'll do is I'll alter the camera so you can see at the top. I'm going to crack the nut on the bottom of the bottom yoke, and then I'll loosen the clamp bolts off, take the cap bolt out of the top of the forks, and then I'll remove the forks themselves. So I'll just adjust this. Right, so I'll get back onto it. Turn my forks to one side, get the socket up into there. Again, this wasn't tight as well. I say tight, it wasn't set properly. It was just nipped up so that I could put it all together originally. And now that that's done, I won't take this nut off yet. I'll get me a little ratchet and I'll undo the clamp bolt on the bottom yoke. This is Imperial. Put that down there for now. I think these are finger tight. I thought wrong. Because it's been that long since I've done out on the top end, sorry, on the front end, I can't remember what was tight and what was not, and I need a spanner that fits. I know they're not tight, as in proper torqued up tight, but I've obviously nipped them up. Yeah, they weren't tight. So, took the top cap out, and as you can see there, the fork's just sliding out. Screw the top back on. I'm glad I had the tops on. Like the tops on the fork, because all the shit you've seen, all the dust that I've had floating about, it would have all just gone in top of there. I would have to strip them out and clean them again. So I'll just leave them into there and get this other side off. That one was finger tight. I think what I should have done on the other one was lift it up. I think when I loosened the bottom clamp, the whole weight of the fork had dropped on it, which made it give me the illusion that it was actually tight. So again, screw the top bolt in. Stick these over here for now. Right, and what I can do now, get onto this side. What I might do actually is, no I won't, I can explain. Basically, I've got the other one here. This one needs modified because it's too thick. If you remember, I made these because when I bought this kit it didn't have any pinch bolts for the bottom yoke, and it didn't have any bolts that hold the two yokes together through the headstock, so I had to make these, and I made a thick one and a thin one, and the thick one's just too thick, so I'm going to half it, and then you've got one which I'll tighten up. When I do actually get these to where I want them, they'll be Loctited. Then the lock nut will go on, that'll be Loctited as well. And then obviously your cap goes up on the bottom. And I will be tightening the forks up just slightly stiffer than you would have them on a motorbike. With it being a trike, it just gives it a bit more. You still be able to turn it easy enough, but it won't be as free as it is on a motorbike. It's hard to explain. It's almost like you're just nipping it up that little bit extra to sort of semi-act as a damper without actually putting a damper on it. But being careful enough that you don't over tighten it and put too much pressure on the bearings so you just knacker your bearings. I mean, even on a motorbike, you can tighten them up a lot tighter than what they're meant to be, and your bearings will still be fine. But as I say, putting it on this and over tightening them slightly gives it the effect of having a damper on, so it doesn't. It's not as easy to skit about like it can on a motorbike. If any of that made sense. So just hold the bottom yoke because it's going to fall off. Take the bolt off. So that's the bolt out, which is still in the end of the socket. Just be able to drop the bottom yoke off, and then I'll give it a waggle, and there's the bottom taper bearing, which it's not dry. There's some sort of lube on it, but it's not greased up, which is what this is what I'm going to be doing now, greasing it all up, putting it back together, sort of thing. So that can just sit on there for now. Make sure it's not going to drop out of there. And then basically I can lift the top yoke out, which in a sense it's like a set of standard yokes but upside down. So whereas on a standard set you'd have, that would be the bottom yoke with the fixed bearing and the shield on, etc. That would go up, then you put your top yoke on the top and tighten everything down. Well, this works the other way around, so that you've got a nice clean top to your yokes, sort of thing. And as I say, I got these at a fucking bargain price. So just sit them down there. Also what I can do is, as most of you will know, most Harleys have grease nipples on the headstock. So I'll grease all the bearings up, put some grease in the races, and then when I've put them together I'll put some, get the grease gun and I'll pump some grease into the headstock as well, so there's always grease in there. So what I'll do for now is I'm going to have a quick wipe, have a bit of a clean and get some of this dust off just around the headstock area. Eventually I'll be cleaning the whole bike, but I'll just get the crap off around here, give the forks a clean, give the wheel a quick clean, yokes a quick wipe over. And I'm not talking like getting the chrome cleaner, I'm giving everything a good polish. It's just a case of wiping all the dust off it and stuff, because when it's all done and dusted I'll go from front to back and polish everything. So I'll knock you off for now, and I'll come back when we're ready to start greasing up and putting it back together. Right, I've got a smear of grease in there. Everything's had a wipe over. I've cleaned the wheel off, cleaned the forks off, etc. What I've also done is, as you can see there, I've packed the grease into the bearings on we can get a decent angle where there's some light. So the bearings are greased. I put my grease gun on there, as you can see there's a bit of grease on the nipple, just to squirt it through into there, and then I cleaned it back out inside just to make sure that wasn't blocked. And then just as a reminder to folk, obviously I've greased the bottom, just put a layer of grease on there, sort of thing. But that tag there that you can see hanging down, this has got an internal fork stop on it, which sits into that back slot there, and then obviously as it turns it hits that tag. So yeah, so put a bit of grease on the races, pumped a little bit through there just to make sure it was clear and not blocked. And if you look in the top, you can see the hole down the centre isn't actually that big. Obviously it's bigger than the shaft on the on the yoke. But when you pump grease in, you think to yourself, when you look down there's a lot of grease to fill that up, but most of that's going to be filled with the shaft going through. So when you actually pump grease into there when your shaft's in, there's only a very small gap around the edges, so it doesn't actually take that much grease. And what it does, if you look at the top of that bearing, you can see that there's like a gap from the outer race to the inner race, and you've got your rollers inside there. As it pushes down the bearing, same on that one, as it pushes down through the headstock, it actually squeezes in through that gap and pushes out on the outside as well onto the races. So it is a good idea to keep your headstock bearings greased up. So I'll clean that up when I'm done and I've pumped grease in, because I've also got a cap to go on that. There's a cap to go on them grease nipples that are on the back axle as well. So I'll put you back on this stand and we'll start putting it back together. And what I will say is I'm going to be tightening it up, as I've said earlier, to the point where I'm happy with it, but I won't be putting the bottom nut on, and I won't be putting the bottom cover on yet. I want to take that nut to a mate's house who's got a lathe, and I'm just going to turn it down. I'm going to make it half thickness. I will be Loctiting the bolts on, sorry, the nuts on, and because of the design of it, if you ever want to tighten them up or loosen them off, all you have to do is take the bottom cover off the bottom yoke, undo the lock nut, and either loosen or tighten the other nut. Sorry, when I say I'm Loctiting it on, the first nut, the adjuster nut, that won't be Loctited, but the second one, the lock nut, that will be Loctited on. So, because that'll be easier one to crack to get off again, and then it's easy to just do fine adjustments on the adjuster nut, if you know what I mean. So, right, we'll make a start anyways. So, first things first is I'll just grab a bit of blue cloth, and when I've poked this through, this top yoke, I'll give the threads are quite clean to be fair, but I want to make sure that they stay that way, because when I do come to put Loctite on, I don't want grease in the threads. So basically just feed your top yoke down, your bearing sat on nicely. I'll just give it a waggle to spread the grease about. And I'll just put a glove on so I'm not getting my fingers covered in grease off this bottom bearing. Right, so as you already saw, the bottom bearing's already greased up. Say I've got grease again on there. I'll probably give it a wipe off and use some I'll put some solvent, like a degreaser, on a rag and clean these threads off before. Well, in fact I can probably do that now. So if I find my solvent cleaner, what I'll do, I'll just knock you off for a sec, get a clean bit of rag, find my solvent cleaner and just wipe these threads off on the bottom of here. I'll be back in a sec. Right, I've just cleaned the threads off, so there's no grease on them now, and we'll get the bottom yoke on. Just move this grease gun. Right, and we'll get this fired up. Make sure it's in its slot. And start winding the the bottom nut on. Now obviously it's just hand tight at the minute. And looking at that, I'm trying to find my little, my little rule. And my gigs. It's pointless getting my little rule if I can't read the fucking thing. I've never really took much notice under here, to be fair. I'm saying that I'm going to cut that thing down. If I've got enough threads, I might just not bother and just put it on. No, what I've got, I know I can nip it up a little bit more yet, but what I've got there is 11mm of threads, and this is 15mm wide. So what I'll probably end up doing is skimming that down and probably making that like, I don't know, the one that's already in is like 6mm. So I'll probably skim this and down to like 9, down to 9mm, and then it'll go up, it'll cover all the threads, and the cap will go on okay. I think I do have a vague memory of putting both of them on, and then the chrome cover doesn't go on all the way, it doesn't sit on properly. So yeah. So yeah, back to the original idea. I'm going to skim that down so it's a lot thinner. Right, take these back off now. And what I'm also going to do, I'll just nip this up just a touch. So it might seem as if I feel, if you were doing this yourself for instance, it might feel, you think, oh that's a bit stiff. Once you've got your forks in and everything, it's surprising how suddenly free they are. So, right, so the next step is, let's get a fork in. Do hold the fork in yet. Yeah. So undo the top, don't forget to take your washer off with your cap. And then obviously just feed I'll nip them up in a minute, I'll get the other fork on. Now you don't want to be tightening up this bottom yoke yet. and I'll just nip them up a little bit tighter on the top, not full tight because I can't nip them proper tight until these are tightened up. It'll just twist the leg. So just carefully does it so as not to scratch the chrome. Just give them a little nip up. I mean, you can get them tight, like good and tight, but not tight enough, if you know what I mean. But once you clamp, once the bottom yoke's clamped up, you can proper tighten up then. So I think what I'll do next, I'm just going to pump some grease into this headstock. And you can actually hear it bubbling, sort of popping as it's pushing through. So I'll just give it a waggle about and give it another couple of pumps. Right, put just a tad too much in then I think. So I'll get my rag, and it has gone up and down. I don't know if you can see into there, but there's actually grease come out, which isn't an issue. You just take your time, wipe it up. It also looks as if it's shoved a bit through the steering lock. Running out a clean bit of rag now. And as you move it about, it will squirt a little bit out. It's not a big issue. You can actually hear the grease pushing air out. So where there was like maybe some gaps in the actual bearing, it's getting rid of it. and it's pushing a lot of grease out. But I'd rather be looking at grease than for it. So I think what I'll do, because I've got quite a bit of grease to clean up here before I continue, in fact what we'll do, I'll just, while I've got the forks in, I'll just give that another nip up. Remember that gas in it. Right, well I'll just quickly show you what I'm talking about here with the grease. Because I've pumped the headstock full, it's, when you move it, it's just pushing excess grease out. And even though that might seem stiff, once you get the wheel and everything on, that'll loosen up again. So, right, I'm just going to knock you off. I'll clean this up and keep at it until it stops pushing it out, and then I'll come back.